resumed today.
I was in a state of shock.
With Jennifer McCabe back on the stand.
Everyone was running around, and what seems to be forgotten is that my friend was lying there on the ground.
Today, the defense focused on what has been said.
Ms. McCabe, the truth of the matter is you've manufactured this new story for this jury because you think it helps you out.
Absolutely not.
And what was allegedly heard.
But I can tell you today with 100% clarity, she said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him.
We're breaking down the big moments from day 15 of testimony. Canton Confidential, the Karen Reed murder trial, starts right now.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. I'm Glenn Jones.
I'm J.C. Monahan. It was a half day of testimony with only one witness. The defense cross-examined Jennifer McCabe. She's the sister of Nicole Albert, Brian Albert's wife. McCabe was friends with the victim, John O'Keefe, and was part of the group who went out drinking with him just hours before his death. She was also with the defendant, Karen Reed, in the early morning hours of January 29th, when they found O'Keefe in the front yard of Brian Albert's home.
McCabe is the one who Googled how long to die in the cold on her phone. She testified Reed asked her to make that search after John was found, but the defense says that search happened before he was found. We'll have to wait until tomorrow for more on that. The defense didn't get to the Google search, even though they cross-examined McCabe today for more than 3 hours.
So a lot of details to get to from today's testimony. Our Kirsten Glavin live in Dedham with the biggest moments.
Well, it was a long day with a lot of pushback from Jennifer McCabe, who even made it a point to look directly at the jury when answering some of her questions. Jennifer McCabe returning to the stand Tuesday morning and remaining there for a 4-hour day of court.
If I'm looking straight out at an SUV, I'm not looking down at the ground.
McCabe cross-examined about the night she saw Karen Reed's SUV parked outside of the home on Fairview Road in Canton, where their group of friends had gathered after a night of bar hopping.
Where was the body?
I have no idea. I'm assuming the body was on the front lawn.
Reed's defense later questioning about that next morning when John O'Keefe's body was found, showing paperwork indicating McCabe never testified to a grand jury in April of 2022 that she heard Reed confess.
Every single one of those, 12 separate times, you indicated that she asked a question, something like, could I have hit him or did I hit him, correct?
Correct.
She now says she did.
I'm not sure if it's in this document, but I can tell you today with 100% clarity, she said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him.
McCabe later shown an image of Reed's taillight and accused of deleting conversations from her cell phone.
I willingly turned over my phone.
After you deleted your phone call logs, correct?
Absolutely not.
When asked about group chats with other witnesses and overhearing a law enforcement interview with Kerry Roberts, McCabe denied accusations of helping get everyone's stories straight.
At the end of the day, our friend was dead, and we were trying to figure out what had happened to him together. There was no direction. We were all trying to figure out what had happened, because that's what you do when you lose somebody you love.
On several occasions, McCabe accusing Reed's defense of twisting the facts.
The story that you've created is not the truth. You're spinning all of this.
The day ending with questions about McCabe calling John O'Keefe around the time he likely died.
So according to you, you literally butt dialed John O'Keefe's phone 6 times in the span of 19 minutes. Is that right?
I don't remember making any of those calls, so my assumption is I put my phone in my back pocket, and that was it.
A lot of tense back and forth there. McCabe will be back on the stand first thing tomorrow morning.
Kirsten, I know there have been peaks and valleys to the number of Reed supporters who have been outside the courthouse, but it sounds like today was one of those peak days.
Yeah, Glenn, there was a huge showing of support by those Free Karen Reed supporters we've seen outside of the courthouse here. We do have some video of that I want to show you. They even set up a tent outside as well. They had large cutouts cardboard cutouts, a lot of signs as well. Everyone continued to wear pink this afternoon. Of course, it was a nice day, so that could have played a part in that. But also, Jennifer McCabe really is a star witness for the prosecution in this case. So it's likely, because this was a very important day in terms of testimony so far.
We're joined now by our courtroom insider, Sue O'Connell. Sue, we want to talk about the mood inside the courtroom today. Before we do, we have a little bit of the voicemail. It was extracted off of John O'Keefe's phone. Let's listen to that, and we'll talk on the other side. Okay, it was difficult to hear the first time. That was difficult to hear the second time. How was it for you? You just heard it, but compared to in the courtroom in that moment.
Yeah, so JC, I've been talking to folks who've been watching on our station, live streaming, listening to it, and they're like, what? It was just a lot of muffled sounds. You know, what was so important about it? But in the courtroom, it was haunting, it was chilling, it was frightening. I'm actually getting an emotion of dread listening to it now. And you can see on Jen McCabe's face listening to it again, that it was this thump, thump, thump of the windshield wipers as they were driving to Fairview and getting there, and then the screaming. Remember, it's a voicemail from a phone that is in the back, right? So the muffled part of it is because it's an accidental call, and that's how the voicemail got to John's phone. But it was like an M. Night Shyamalan movie trailer, because you don't know what's happening. You can hear the terror. You can hear Karen Reed yelling. You can hear what we know is Kerry Roberts telling her to shut up. And you hear this thump, thump, thump of the windshield. And throughout the entire courtroom, all the spectators, Karen Reed's family and supporters, the O'Keefes, I can't see all the O'Keefe's faces, but I leaned over to look. There were tears in a few people's eyes on both sides of this trial listening to it, because it really, really brought home the trauma that happened to John O'Keefe. And again, Karen Reed is on trial for murder here. If she didn't do this, this is the trauma that she experienced as well. So it was really something that in the courtroom, I think everyone felt this terror of it. And if you're watching and listening at home, you just couldn't, you're trying to make out what the muffled words were, and that was the least important part of it, really.
This is another reason why it's so valuable having you inside the courtroom. Another thing you're doing for us is helping us understand when the jury gets frustrated. You've been posting sort of in real time when that happens. One of those moments today was when they were talking about this text circle among Jen McCabe's family, where they share information about what happened that night. We'll play a part of that and then talk to Sue afterward.
We all have compared and contrasted your perspectives of what happened that night, correct?
We've tried to figure out what happened to John, our friend.
And you've talked to them extensively about your observations and what your story or your version is. Is that right?
To be honest, not extensively. Speaking about it is very painful and difficult.
What does extensively mean? More than twice?
Well, you tell me.
I'm asking the questions, Ms. McCabe. That's how this works.
I understand, but extensively would mean almost every day.
Do you talk to them almost every day?
I do, but not about the case.
Subjects about this case?
So this moment was really about their communications within the family about what happened that night, whether it's text or in person. How were jurors responding to that kind of back and forth, which was contentious, but it seemed to be contentious throughout?
Yeah, and it was also sort of contentious on both sides, right, depending on how you look at it. But a number of jurors are clearly frustrated. I don't know who they're frustrated at. I don't know if they're frustrated about the whole situation. I don't know if they're frustrated at Alan Jackson or Jen McCabe, but there is this sort of scrunching of faces and shaking of heads, like, let's just get to the question and the answer, because the struggle that happens over the definition of frequent or the definition of, field of view, any of these things. Acquaintance, right. And it's not just this witness. It really does try the jurors' patience, and you can see it. Again, I don't know if who that's working in what favor, or it's just the fact of life when you're in trial that the person gets to answer the questions, and you have to answer the way they're asked.
And Jennifer is back on the stand tomorrow for a continuation of the cross-examination.
Yes, indeed.
All right, Sue, thank you so much. Coming up, we are talking to one of the most watched streamers on YouTube for her live coverage of the Karen Read trial, Emily Baker. We'll be right back.
The thing that he's trying to get at, that she is evading, is that you said the everything is this comment she made about Karen and John, and you were pearl-clutchingly appalled that she made this comment, but now you're saying you heard nothing. That's the shift. No, I just heard voices. You heard something.
And you were just listening to Emily D. Baker. She is a former prosecutor, but you may know her from her YouTube, where she has a huge following.
Emily has covered a number of high-profile trials, and she joins us now, live. Emily, it's very impressive to watch you do this in real time as the trial is going on. But let's start at the beginning here. How did you hear about this case in Massachusetts, and what drew you to it?
Absolutely. My audience, the law nerds, asked me about this case and said, are you paying attention? Are you covering the Karen Read case? And I said, not yet. And when I took an initial look at it, I said, there's a lot of questions here. And attorney Alan Jackson worked in the same office I did when we were both district attorneys. And so I was very interested, but also my audience was very interested. And that's what drew my attention to it. And then I decided I wanted to watch it as a juror. So I didn't dive into it much before trial started because I wanted to know what was happening in court.
So, Emily, we're in week 4 of testimony. What are your thoughts so far?
I'm confused why we don't have any of the scientific evidence yet. It's been difficult going through all the witness testimony without knowing what the cause of death is and the full dive into the prosecution's theory of the case. We're 40 witnesses in, and we haven't seen some of that scientific evidence that normally comes a bit earlier in the case. I'm really surprised after today's testimony that Jen McCabe wasn't much earlier in the case to lay out that timeline that the prosecution seems to be following.
Yeah, it's interesting you should say that because we've heard from some legal experts that they think maybe Jen McCabe should have been the first person out of the blocks.
I'm not surprised that it was the victim's family because, of course, they want to be able to be in the courtroom to see the rest of the trial. And with the order to keep witnesses out, that sequestration, they couldn't be until they testified. But I'm surprised she wasn't one of the first few witnesses because by the time we're this deep in the trial, it's a lot to check against with the 40 witnesses that came before her.
Okay, Emily, stay right there. We're going to take a quick break. But when we come back, we'll lean into your legal expertise to talk about today's testimony.
And welcome back. We are joined once again by Emily D. Baker, who's been analyzing the trial during her live streams on YouTube. Thanks for staying with us, Emily.
All right, Emily, our NBC 10 Boston legal analyst, Michael Coyne, said he thought Jennifer McCabe held up well today during the 3+ hours of cross-examination. What was your take?
She was definitely evasive at times and trying to be combative with Alan Jackson, which is just not going to work. But if the jury's already annoyed with Alan Jackson, they might feel that it's heavy-handed at times. But there were definitely moments where her testimony shifted, and there were times when she was trying to very clearly not answer the question that was being asked. And that will play as it will play with the jury.
Well, as a matter of fact, let's play one of the more contentious parts, if we can, from today, because on Friday, Jennifer McCabe testified that Karen Read made declarative statements in front of first responders that morning saying, quote, I hit him, which essentially would be a confession. And today, the defense grilled her on her prior grand jury testimony, in which she didn't mention that Read ever said that. Let's take a listen, and we'll talk to you on the other side.
Her answer was, she said, did I hit him? Could I have hit him? Is he dead?
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
That is correct.
That would have been a good time to offer up that she confessed, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, right?
Objection.
Sustained as to that form.
What is your reaction to that portion of the testimony?
I was surprised that she wasn't clear in her grand jury testimony about the declarative I hit him statement. She said on direct examination that it was crystal clear. I hit him 3 times, no qualifications. And now it's coming out that this seems to be the first time she's really said that under oath, and it doesn't seem to be in any of the police reports, which surprised me because the prosecution leaned heavily on it in their opening statement.
I just do want to mention, did you notice, Emily, that she also looked at the jury at time, turned. Kirsten had mentioned that and really hammered home when she said, I hit him. She pivoted.
Yeah. Is that effective, Emily?
She's been looking at the jury frequently, but not too much. She's not staring them down. It's more in a comfortable way when she looks at them to make a point or to check in with how they're receiving her testimony. And it can be very effective. And this courtroom is so small, the jury is sitting so close. I think it would be awkward to not look at them on occasion. But it's clear that she's testified before juries before, and we know that that's been at least 2 grand juries for this witness.
All right, Emily, I'm kind of curious about this one because both Jen and Matt McCabe were questioned about text conversations and in-person conversations they had within the family about what happened on that night. I have to admit, it doesn't seem unreasonable to me that you would talk to a family member about something like this, but it keeps coming up in testimony. Is it a problem point that the family members were discussing this case before testifying in court?
I don't think it's a problem that they were talking about it because, of course, they will, especially before much of the investigation really gets underway. But the way that they're talking about it in the text messages can be interpreted either in a, of course, this is what happened way, or in a, we're concocting a story way. So there's 2 interpretations. But sometimes when they try to distance from those conversations, it gets confusing. Saying that calls that show answered weren't answered, saying that things are butt dials repetitively, that kind of distancing makes everything look a little bit more suspicious or confusing, potentially for a jury and definitely for those watching this case across the world.
We only have a few seconds left. Emily, what do you think? What are you looking forward to tomorrow? As in, what are you expecting?
Well, we're going to hear the rest of Jen McCabe's testimony and then Carrie Roberts. And I'm very interested to hear the rest of what happened that morning and how Carrie Roberts ended up there. Was she called by Karen Reed? It's still unclear. And if Karen hit him, she's calling everybody and taking them back to where he was. I'm interested to see how Carrie's testimony goes tomorrow.
Emily D. Baker, former prosecutor and YouTuber, thank you so much for your insight. We appreciate it.
Okay, Emily, when we return, Sue O'Connell's back to talk about something she has noticed in court. It may be a distraction for the jurors, and it's happened almost every day of testimony. That's when we come back.
It's very hard to this report time-wise.
So you can look at every single time on the report. There's not that many.
I'm just trying to say that it goes from 7:21.
We've learned during this trial that downtown Dedham can be a busy spot. If you've been live streaming the trial, you've probably heard sirens interrupting things just like they did there. At times, the judge has had to pause testimony and wait for the noise to pass. We're joined once again by our courtroom insider, Sue O'Connell. So you're hearing that. We're hearing it through a microphone. Is it amplified for us, or does it sound like that?
No, it's louder for us.
Wow.
Now, as you know, we're in the small courtroom. The press is up against the sort of right side of the judge. There's open windows along the judge side, and this is the busiest street in America, I believe. I don't think you can get anywhere on this from in Dedham unless you go down the street and there's sirens, there are police cars, there are trucks. It's at an intersection and there's a crosswalk, so often the truck and the windows are open because it's a 100-something-year-old courtroom. It doesn't have air conditioning. So on a regular basis, the court officers are opening the windows, closing the windows, testimony is halted. There's just sirens that are playing all the time on a regular basis. And this morning, just as court was starting, they had a sidebar, and someone was enjoying the weather outside, had their windows down, and had this country song at full blast. And everyone looked at us in the press room like we had our phones on or something, and we're pointing to the window like, it's not us, it's out there. Wow. And they had to run over and close the window. So it's hard to hear. So
it can be distracting.
And it's very distracting.
Yeah.
I mean, it stops the flow of conversation or interview
for
style.
Everybody, right? Jen McCabe is trying to read this very complicated document that was handed to her, which was complicated, admittedly, by Alan Jackson saying, it's not in chronological order, blah, blah, blah. And then the siren goes by, and you don't know if the judge is going to halt or, if the lawyer's going to halt. So there's this tension that happens. And tomorrow it's going to be 80-something degrees.
We're heading into Memorial Day weekend. Yeah. We have about 20 seconds left. Just tell me, the court schedule really almost comes to a stop.
It's crazy. And there's only one day of court next week, and that's on Tuesday. For some reason, we only have court a couple of days this week. I think everyone agrees Prosecution is behind. I know the judge is trying to push some things through, so we'll see what happens. But it just doesn't seem that we're getting to the finish line anytime soon.
All right, Sue O'Connell, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
There's a lot to follow in this trial, and our website is the best tool to keep track of what's going on. Head to NBC10Boston.com and click on the Karen Read tab. There you'll see all of our nightly recaps. You can get details on where to find the live streams of this trial, including our YouTube page. You can also find a family tree to help keep track of who is on the stand and how they're connected to others in this case. That's it for us tonight on Canton Confidential.
Testimony resumes tomorrow around 9 a.m. Jennifer McCabe back on the stand. We'll be streaming that trial for free on our website, our app, on YouTube, and on NECN. And of course, we'll bring you the daily recap right here at 7 p.m.